I'm really excited to have a good friend and a person who's been maybe asked to help lead the industry in the industry's most challenging time and really been a fantastic chair for us. Chad Mackay of Fire and Vine Hospitality. Chad, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Lisa, as we get rolling, Lisa Lineberger is, I'll say you're my producer for the podcast today. Can you give everyone a sense of how this is going to work and how to utilize the chat room and so on and so forth?
Yes, down at the bottom of your screen, you will see a chat option or a Q&A option over to the right of that. If you have a question for either of our speakers today, you can go ahead and type that in and we'll get them answered as soon as we can.
Great. Just for operators who are asking questions, this is a podcast that will be repeated and webcast. So just be prepared that any question you ask will get repeated for the next month and in different venues and different places. So I just want everyone to be conscious of that. I didn't want anyone to ask a question and say, oh crap, I didn't realize that was going to be public. I want to apologize to you later. So with that, welcome everyone. I'm going to start off with talking about the state of the industry and do a quick run through of that. Get my screens to come up. So as we do each month, we talk about the state of the industry, give a quick view of the virus, what's going on there, and a little bit about the latest news, crystal ball, and a lot going on, and honestly, really a great guest. So I'm going to try to get through some of this stuff quickly and allow you to ask me questions about what's going on, next steps, why is this important, what the heck are you smoking, anything along those lines. And we'll move forward from there. So on the state of the industry, August continued what we saw in July. We are still down about 30% of our workers, about 112,000 for the year, which is about 112,000. So the industry is still struggling to recover. Not a surprise to most of you, and something we're really trying to get through. For those who are watching the podcast for the first time, I will say what I've said several times over. This is the worst economic crisis that has hit our industry in a lifetime. And any of the recessions can't compare to this. From our high to our low, we lost about 190,000 jobs. In the height of the low of the Great Recession just a decade ago, we lost 15,000 jobs. It gives you a sense of just how impactful this has been. One of the things that is starting to emerge is this recovery is starting to be regional. Seattle and Skagit are still down 40%, but other areas of the state are only down 25 or less. So we're starting to see a separation, or at least we did in August and July, of recovery is coming along in some areas and really not much at all in others. On the virus update, when we last met in August, I was hopeful. We saw almost a 7 to 8 week decline in the virus, and had that trend line continued, we were going to get back to 25 by the end of September. And we were aware of the risk, but there was also a moment of hope. Unfortunately, around mid-September, the numbers started going the other way. And we have gone from about 60 cases per 100,000 all the way up to near 100 again. And so that is bad news. It's impacted our negotiations to make change and raise concerns about how strongly we have the virus under control. This has been the main metric of the governor's office, which is why we use it and we talk about it and we look at this one regularly. But I'll be very direct. Since our last call, we've started a task force called Target Zero with the Liquor Control Board, the State Health Department, and local health departments in the governor's office, analyzing data. So in future podcasts, we might bring more data in that might be more illustrative of what we need to do as an industry to get back to whatever a new normal will be. Until then, what we have discovered in the last 5-6 weeks of work of Target Zero Task Force is when we see an outbreak in our industry, it's usually due to non-compliance. We're not seeing haven't found an outbreak in our industry where there's been compliance. So that's good news. We know the rules work. For the 95% of people who are following the rules, you might have an employee get out and get sick, but you're not seeing anything in your building that should concern you if you're following the rules. However, for those who are in the non-compliance, we are seeing when employee mask wearing is not going on, when mask guidance isn't going on, and of the other rules, not mingling. When you're allowing karaoke night, when you're allowing people to wander around your bar or interact like they did in December of last year, that's where we're seeing the outbreaks. So more work to be done, but in the next month, I'm telling you, the best thing you can do is focus on those two areas. Let's get masks worn, let's make them culture, let's get over it. And two, let's eliminate the no mingling. I want to talk about some of the rule changes. So today is October 7th. I don't know when everyone will watch or rewatch this this podcast, but yesterday, October 6th, the governor announced several rules changes. And so if you've been working with us, you know we were trying to make 5 rule changes as soon as we could. One of them was eliminate the single household rule. And the governor did announce the elimination of the single household rule. We were pushing for a later last call time, which the governor moved it to 11. And 11 is a good step. But I will be honest with you, and this is why it comes back to compliance. I think we could have gotten later had there been stronger compliance within the industry. So you can help me move this again in the future by helping if you're a vendor, getting all your customers to understand how important compliance is. If you've got a bar somewhere across the street who you see it going on and they want a midnight closing time, help us get there by having compliance around masks and having compliance around mingling. We wanted to change the 6-foot rule to be more flexible, which we feel like we've gotten to. We wanted to increase table size to allow groups of parties of 6 or 8 to be able to sit down, and which we've also been able to do. So if you're a phase 2 county, you can now have a table of 6. If you're a phase 3 county, you can now have a table of 8. I have talked to a couple people who have said, well, okay, you got me 1 more chair. No, we got you 6 more chairs, because the reality is what we learned is families of 6 have been staying home. Families of 6 have given up on the industry because they don't want to separate their kids from where they sit down. They don't want that split. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to bring those families back in and helping move forward. The area that we still need to work on, and we're going to continue to work on, is increased dining capacity past 50%. Love to get to 75%. Unfortunately, we're not able to do this in this round. The spike in the virus hurt this part of the negotiation, as did our non-compliance. And so those are 2 areas that, as we've set ourselves up for the next round of changes and turning the dial again, we need to see the virus come back down. And we would love to keep working to increase that, narrow that 5% that's not complying to get that to 2 or 1 or be as good as we possibly can. On the lodging side of the industry, last week, the end of September, we were able to get many of the meeting rules changed. And yesterday, October 6th, we were able to get wedding venues changed. Meetings and events is going to be one of those rolling things that the dial will turn, the dial will turn, the dial will turn slowly over the upcoming year. But we think we were able to take good first steps in that area. We were able to fix the pool rule for those places that wanted to use their pools. The phase 3 rules that would allow more liberal use of pools is now available to everyone in phase 2. And that change was made. We're still working on the fix to the workout facility guideline. Honestly, of all the things on here, I think that's the one we're furthest away from finding the right negotiation tactic to crack this nut, but we're going to continue to work on it. Chad, you've actually kind of reached out from your experience in lodging and helping us deal with property tax issues. So we're not there yet on a solution, but we are working on it. And it is a conversation we're having every week. And we've made a lot of improvements to the eviction rule, but we would like to get this one finished off and be able to take it off our list because we've got it done. So haven't quite been able to do that. I would encourage everyone to work. We are partnering with all your local DMOs on a public campaign to talk about how hospitality is safe. Please do that. We are hopeful to roll out a new enforcement campaign later this month with a lot of cooperation between the industry, local health departments, and Liquor Control Board, and using the mass force of local health departments and the enforcement power of Liquor Control Board to really crack down and get us better compliance around mask wearing and mingling. And let's all encourage everyone to make good decisions. And let's have the public view us as not the problem, but one of the people in our community that's really pushing for solutions. And that's kind of the immediate. Maybe in the next podcast, we'll talk about the legislative, which will be that road to the right, because we're also working on the relief efforts we need as well. Lisa, has there been any questions in the chat room on anything that I presented?
Not yet.
Okay. Chad, anything that you saw me present that you think the average operator probably would have a question on?
No, I mean, I know there's some stuff coming up on tenting and 6-foot rule, but that will probably explain a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're continuing to work on tenting. We're hoping we'd love to be optimists and said that's going to be a shorter term thing that will allow tents to be more viable as we approach winter. So that's something we will continue to work on.
Great.
All
yeah,
right.
No, good progress.
With that, Chad, welcome to our monthly podcast. Excited to have you here. I'm going to stop the share of my screen. I got to know you well, and I think within the King County community specifically, you have some legendary properties that people have known for decades, but not every corner of the state is familiar with Fire and Vine. Can you give us a little bit of the elevator speech about what Fire and Vine is, who your companies are, and other stuff that would help our listeners understand what kind of business you run and bring to the table?
I appreciate it. Yeah, Fire and Vine Hospitality is a family-owned business in the Pacific Northwest. We're in Washington, Oregon, and started back in '96 with my dad bringing back the El Gaucho in downtown Seattle. And we've grown that to a Gaucho in Portland, Tacoma, Bellevue, Seattle, that we're actually reopening here at the end of October in our new space. We also have Aqua by El Gaucho on Pier 70, Heirloom. And then we manage the Heritage Resort over in Walla Walla, as well as partner on the marketing and loyalty program for Walla Walla Steak Company and Crossbuck Brewery. So we're a Pacific Northwest hospitality-based company, and we've got more things to come. We got a big project on the Vancouver, Washington waterfront, partnered with the Hotel Indigo to open an El Gaucho there and a rooftop lounge. So we were about 485 and strong, and now we're about 185. So hoping to continue to grow and get back to that bigger number, bringing people back. So hopefully that gives you a little background.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of our operators, I think you're most known for that El Gaucho and Aqua, those properties and all that they bring. What has it been like to get into the lodging side of the industry? And, after years of worried about the 3 buckets of labor, operating, and food, having other acronyms and things being thrown in, and also managing the lodging side.
Yeah, we got into the lodging side actually at El Gaucho, Seattle. We had, I think it's been about 14 years ago, we had an opportunity to take the space above us, and we added 17 rooms of lodging for the El Gaucho customer. For us, it was an additive to create a wonderful downtown experience. And I mean, I love my lodging operators. I've got lots of great friends, but we start with profitable restaurants. And so when we added rooms, it just added to the profitability versus seeing restaurants as kind of a break-even piece. So we've really taken that and gone forward and said, hey, if we can help lodging operators by creating profitable F&B operations, that's a way for us to expand and ultimately, over time, you'll see us managing more lodging operations as well, and maybe owning a couple additional ones coming up. So we're ambitious. Even in the middle of COVID, you got to think about future and think about the opportunities that will exist while we face the stark reality of the crisis we're in.
Well, and as you listed all your properties, you're obviously in more areas than Seattle, even though you might be known for Seattle the most. But it's fair to kind of say you have a second home now in Walla Walla, in your properties there, and they have a great reputation. What's it like it's got to be two completely different cultures. What's it like to have the Seattle and Portland cultures with one property, and now having such a great presence in Walla Walla? Has that culture change been a challenge? Is it just the same, just hospitality?
It's just hospitality. I mean, my dad retired over to Walla Walla 8 years ago, which is why we actually are now helping manage those properties and work with our partner, Dan Thiessen, on Walla Walla State Company in Crossbuck. To me, I've known Walla Walla for years. We've had great relationships with almost every one of the major winemakers there. They're friends. I'm married to my wife, who's from Wenatchee, Washington. I love rural. I love farming. I love the open space and outdoors. I just happen to be stuck in a city. So to me, Walla Walla is just a fantastic destination, both for wine lovers as well as people that just want to get out and enjoy. I think one thing when people were asking us about Walla Walla, and when we were concerned that there was not a lot of experienced, hospitality people there. And I said, the thing you start with in Eastern Washington is you start with nice. Right. And that's what I found in rural market. You start with nice, and we'll teach them skills, the other skills, but you can't buy nice, right? You gotta have to be raised with it. And so I love our Walla Walla properties and the ability to expand beyond just the urban environments.
Yeah, I was talking to an operator. I don't think this is true everywhere, but I was having a unique conversation with an operator back in the good times in October, November, when the hiring crisis was absolutely on. And they were taking training time to teach eye contact and smile and greeting guests. That was in an urban environment, it was more of an active training. And it probably takes away some of that burden in more rural communities. So people already know the guests coming in, they're glad to see them.
Yep.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about you as chair. You have I hope we never have a more dichotic time in our history of going from 2.5% unemployment, growing times, booming competitive industry. Hard to imagine a higher mark, even though the competitive nature was getting fierce. The gross dollars of the industry was an all-time high. Openings were happening, and then this I don't think we have records on industry sales from the 20s, but my guess is it would show similar. Walk us through the highlights and the positives of your chairmanship and what's it like to be chair, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges. What have you liked being chair? What have been some of your highlights as chair?
I mean, the highlights as chair. I mean, I think, for the most part, the reality is we need to have an association that's strong, that has a voice for all operators. And not everybody can participate and, get in to participate in the board meetings or government affairs, but we have to be a voice for everybody. And what I love is that we've built a board and you've built a team that gives a voice to all. And, we started as single operators. I mean, we owned little burger joints when I was growing up as a kid. I know what it's like to not have any time to be able to think a little bit further out and think about some of the governmental policies. And what my family has always proposed is that if you're gonna complain or talk about things, you got to jump in to make a difference. And I think that being part of the hospitality board and then as chair is, how do we bring voice and make a difference for those that are so busy and so wrapped up that that we have that opportunity to have impact. And it's not my voice, it's our voice. It's not my issues, it's our issues. As chair, I think that we get an opportunity to reiterate that and remind board members that we are here for all of us, not just our own operations.
15, 20 years from now, when you're sitting on a chair with grandkids on your lap and you're recalling your high points of being chairman of the association, what do you think you'll look back and say, these are the high points, the positive memories of being chairman and the things we've accomplished under your leadership?
Well, it's not just my leadership, it's the entire board's leadership and the executive team. I think if we go back 10, 15 years, I think our association was really seen as a very conservative association that was an association that said no a lot, and that we blocked a lot of things from happening. And I think if I look back and kind of think about the opportunities and what we did, I think one of the pieces, and I can't remember, it wasn't when I was chair, but it was part of the board, was the ability to move forward on a paid family leave for the state. And then we were the first business association to come out and not say no, but said, how can we craft a solution that works for all of us? That we thought that was important. And I think that we've been taken more seriously in Olympia and on the Hill because we haven't just thrown up a no way attitude and really trying to work on real solutions that are impacting pieces. I think the other side is we have kind of battled through some of the minimum wage, is I do think that the Tacoma minimum wage, where it was kind of the $12 versus the 15, and that we were able to stop that 15 from having success there, really slowed down the state level $15 an hour. And I think that, in the long run, that is going to be a win. I think the low points are the fact that we've got a what I would call a terrible comorbidity problem in Seattle, which is we continue to have an excessive acceleration of minimum wage and non-tip credit for the city, that they just announced yesterday an additional $1.50 hike for small employers that will start January 2021. And to me, that is, it's going to impact our industry for a long time and haunt us as we go forward.
Seattle has certainly been our challenge, my friend, as we've been trying to find workable solutions in the particular city. There's no doubt about it. So we're cruising along, and the industry's at highs, and COVID hits, and all of a sudden, all the 3-year plans are out the window, and we're going with 3-week plans. Let's start with your own business, and then let's work with the association. What's it been like to lead a hospitality business for you during COVID?
I mean, as you can imagine, it was brutal. It has been really tough. And our teams, we did a layoff early in March, I think March 6th. We thought, okay, if we trim down, we can kind of get through this. I was treating it like maybe a Lehman Brothers collapse or recession collapse. And my team confronted me the next week and said, Chad, we're not going to make it. Like, sales are dropping off. We have to close. And on March 12th, we did a Zoom call with all of our employees to announce that we were going to be closing that Saturday. It was the toughest call toughest thing I've done in my whole life, to basically tell 485 people that their livelihood was coming to an end and that I had no idea what would happen afterwards. The only condolences I could give or consolation was that we did cover the healthcare through April 100%, the employee and employer coverage, because that was the biggest question, is going into a pandemic, am I going to have healthcare? That was a dark time, and I think it was a dark time for everybody. But out of that, start to think about, well, we're going to emerge one day. right? Like you have to have hope, and that the Stockdale Paradox of facing this bleak outlook while also maintaining optimism that will come through that really became what we focused on. And so we looked at versus hibernating, we looked at it as a dry dock opportunity. We replaced all of our systems. We only had 21 people on payroll, on half-time payroll. So it was easy to kind of train everybody again, and started to rethink how could we repiece this business together. If we're going to be at substantially reduced volume levels, we were planning to relaunch with Tuesday to Saturday, dinner only. We sloughed off those meal periods that were just brutal on us anyways, and engaged with landlords, employees, and just kept going until we were able to relaunch our businesses. And by the time we reopened Portland, we had been shut down 100 days. And I mean, just really tough. But at the same time, we had incredible people who were rooting for us to make it through. And we went through what everybody else did, right? We ran to the idle loans. They were shut down. We ran to PPP funding. The first round shut down, right? We didn't get any of that. We came in on the second round. We've been really judicious about spending that money and doing it in a way that would give us longevity. And I think one of the good outcomes out of all this is just the amount of discussions that have happened between operators of how are you doing? What are you thinking about? What are how are you dealing with landlords? Who's being problematic? Who's working with you? And really, I think in some ways has helped some of the operators come together even more. I wish it didn't take a pandemic for us to reinvent our business, but I think that the reality is our businesses are going to be different going forward.
Well, let's pick up on that piece right there, Chad, the reinventing our businesses. I think it is a key. I think some of the change we've been resisting for the better part of a decade, because times were good enough that we could resist. I think change is here. What are the key areas that either you have focused on or you encourage the industry as the chair to focus on, because we need to change? And what are those areas that you would encourage people to look at?
I mean, ultimately we have I think there's two areas that we've got to reinvent or rethink how we do it. And that's the ever increasing minimum wage and the tipped employee circumstance. And in that you have to rethink how this business gets structured and redone. And, we're a service charge model. We pay commissions. We've totally upended the industry and did something completely different. And I think as people start to come back, they're going to have to figure out how we rebuild in an environment where that if you're paying tipped wages, that wage now is becoming super high in parts of our states or depending on your operation. So for Seattle, I think that the reality is the Seattle marketplace is not going to recover because of the comorbidity of all the regulatory rules that we have here. And I mean, I just was looking at a project over in Kirkland, and 4 of the restaurateurs that I know all signed on that project. They were all Seattle restaurateurs only, and they're leaving the city. And I think that at some point there needs to be a wake up call for a couple of these urban environments to realize that they're about to lose some of their best assets that they've had for so long. I think we're going to have to deal with the fact on the full service side that if you are in a high cost area, that our traditional lunch is in peril. And I don't see how lunch within this next year without a complete reversal of travel and office ever stages a comeback. Which is hard to say. And the reality is what happens if there's not a place to go or many places to go downtown for lunch. But the good news is for us and for a lot is, for us, the bulk of our revenue comes from outside the city of Seattle. So we have more revenue in the rest of Washington State than we do here. And so I think you're going to continue to see us build on that. I think you'll hear some announcements on Woodinville that we're just very bullish on the overall market. It's just some of the regulatory places you may find that the recovery takes a lot longer to occur.
We mentioned a couple times within that conversation and the question before about the Stockdale Paradox. For our listeners who aren't familiar with the book Good to Great and the conversation of that paragraph, one, it's Good to Great is one of my top 4 leadership books of all time. Can you talk a little bit about what the Stockdale Paradox means to you?
Yeah, and then, when we're sitting there in April and May without any hope of reopening, to me, it's the ability to hold two truths together. And one is we are facing something that's impending doom, right? And it's stark and it's real, which is we could lose our entire business. I could lose all of our locations. We could be bankrupt. My house gone, right? All of our employees' houses gone. Just you're facing that stark reality that the business as we know it just came to an end, and we have no idea when it will return. And being able to say, how do we deal with that? While at the same time going, there is a future, and having this unresolved or unwavering commitment to a future that we will prevail and get through this. I don't know how, but we will, and we will hold that truth in place as well. And so it's living with that stark reality that is today, while also having this optimism, this realistic optimism that entrepreneurs need to get through. Because if you just lived in the stark reality, you curl up in a ball. If you just live with this optimism, you ignore the reality that you have today. And so that for us, it was about cash management. It was about do not run out of money. How do we do this? Don't pay people. I mean, it's, vendors, all those things getting in negotiations. So for me, that's what Stockdale does is it gives you a realistic look at where you're at with that hope of and optimism that you will triumph and prevail.
I don't think I could explain it any better, Chad. I think you nailed that. And I do think it's an important reality we all have to deal with. And choosing your attitude, right? The work is in front of you. Your team is looking to you for leadership. Your community, your vendors, the people you pay bills to are looking to see what your attitude is. And it's that fine line. I think you described it perfectly. Moving on to a couple of other questions I'd love to ask you about. For a lot of our operators who maybe are getting into politics for the first time, what makes us successful in hospitality and who we are doesn't always translate to how you deal with politics. And you and I had some conversations when you're first getting involved in the association. Other people have struggled during COVID of what's the governor thinking, or what's this person thinking, and why don't they just do this, or don't they understand the minimum wage kills X? As you'll always be with us, I hope, on our board and in other leadership roles, but as you're going out as chair to the next generation of leaders, how have you found the need to talk to our state officials and lead different than the ability that you develop in hospitality to deal with employees, leadership, hard decisions, small margins? How do those difference, and how can you help the next generation of leaders understand that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the toughest part is, as an entrepreneur, as somebody running your business, you get to speak truth and get to things a little quicker. But the reality is, when you're dealing with the political world, you can't rant and rave, right? They will turn you off and just ignore you, versus trying to come in with some data and facts and figuring out a way to approach people who you disagree with. And I think that even as we've gone through COVID, Anthony, there's been times I'm ranting and raving internally or to my team, and my PR director, Beth, she goes, "Oh, it must be Thursday," because I'm on my soapbox, going through Dad, we need to do this and this and this. And then I calm down, and then I realize we have to be able to engage at a civil level and to move stuff forward. That screaming, yelling, complaining does not get us there, even though sometimes that's what we'd really love to do. And I think that is the hardest part, where you can't just be yourself. You do have to help temper that a little bit, because ultimately you want to share your stories, and you want to share other people's stories to get people to open up and at least listen to you. And attacking always shuts down conversations. This is on both sides, so doesn't matter the political parties. It's how do you collaborate and work together with people that you might have formerly been opposed to. And I'll just do a side note. We've been working on a project called Third Door Coalition around chronic homelessness, and part of the whole assumption on that and our go forward strategy was to set aside our differences and work on one common goal. And I think as an association, we've done a good job of doing that, where we can battle on one thing, but on another item, we can actually just work together with the same people we just battled on another issue. And, as much as I want to rant and rave sometimes, we have to have cool heads. We can be emotional, but we also need to be respectful to move stuff forward.
I think that's a great, actually, at least I want to record that and play it for a lot of people who are getting involved in the industry, because it is such a dichotomy of my dad and my uncle in our restaurants growing up. You got through a lot of problems by being fierce, and hospitality teaches you, if you want to get it done, be aggressive and be fierce. And it's a counterintuitive thing when you're approaching community solutions sometimes. So I think that was really well said. Chad, if 5 years from now you're watching my podcast of the next chairperson who's going out, what would you hope that the association would accomplish in your wake in the next 2 to 5 years? What would you hope would be the next thing that you hope the association would tout as a win for the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but on the podcast, but I think there's two areas that we could really change the trajectory of both legislation and our employees' lives. And one is around portable benefits packages and untethering healthcare benefits and all those benefits from just a single employer to people who are working multiple jobs. Why can't we do something different as a state related to that? So to me, there's great opportunity within that. It can be around association health plans that allow employees to choose the different things that they want to put together, but employers contributing to their account for that. The other is how do we activate and harness and really get our teams involved in understanding the industry, being a voice for that industry, and working together. I'll say it a lot to some of the politicians that, it's really interesting. There's everybody here except the employees are not represented. There might be a union representative and some others, but our actual employees, you're missing their voice as well. And I think that there's something there for the association to help to bring light and voice to that. So I think those would be the two big ones that I think are really future and forward looking, that could have a great impact on our industry. We have an incredible industry, and I think sometimes our voices are not heard as loud as they should be, and that there are opportunities and solutions around benefits that could be totally different than what we're doing right now as a state. And I'd love to see that innovation occur.
I 100% agree with both those points. I think I'd love for everyone who's around the state, or even operators who are new to Seattle, to see what a difference the Full Service Worker Alliance made during the paid sick leave conversation.
Yeah.
And there was only 4, I think it's about 4 to 8 of them who truly led, and they built a heck of a coalition. They changed the directory of that conversation by being involved and giving voice to it. And how do we support that? I think is a great question in front of us. We're coming to the end of our time here. And is there anything else, Chad, that you want to pass on at your time as chair, your direction to me, or for our listeners out there that to carry forward during these times or beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I would leave with is you've got an incredible team that has moved so much over the years, but during this COVID and shutdowns and the restrictions and the to leave the general industry to understand there was so much that has occurred behind the scenes that'll never be public, that this team has done an incredible job of keeping us from being shut down in August. I mean, there was a point at which we were going to be shut down again, to continuing negotiations with the government, a lot of stuff that will not end up being on the public side that you deserve a ton of credit for. And unfortunately you won't get other than from the people that know, how incredible a job that the association has done on behalf of everybody. And I know that people are disappointed in all sorts of the changes, and that we got, that we wanted more, but the reality is you keep moving the chains down the field. And to me, that's how we're going to get out of this and continue to win without, being realistic and just keeping forward. So, again, keeping the voice of all the operators, keeping the voice of the entire industry, which is what the association has done, and being an advocate for everyone. So,
well said, Chad. I think we'll end with any other questions. Lisa, are there any questions in the chat room for Chad or myself?
Yes.
And then we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah. We have a question from a hotelier who wants to do an art auction in November. With the restriction changes, her understanding is that even though the auction itself is seated, the looking at art prior to the event is considered networking and social. The customer advised that even though they're classified as a retail sales event, even though they can accommodate all the social distancing guidelines and safety measures for both guests and their team, auctions or retail sales events are not allowed. Is that correct?
I'll tell you what, this is a very specific question, and I think there are answers on how to do these things safely. Yep. But I think they'd be very specific. So, Ann, if you get a chance to email me or email Lisa, Lisa, if you can help me facilitate the capture of her email.
Absolutely.
Let's see what we can do to help work with her customer to see if there's a solution bridge there. There may not be, but my instinct is there. I think there's enough in the rules for creativity to at least have a good conversation.
I would agree.
And those are the questions we had. Okay,
I'm just going to end with, we can make a difference in this thing. We're seeing operators around the state rallying to wear masks and support their community. From Save 509 in Spokane to the efforts going on in Clark County and otherwise. Please wear a mask. Please encourage your team members to wear a mask and help us help you. So hopefully we can have another good conversation next month. Be safe, everyone, and just know we'll keep working hard for you every day.